Hello there. That sleepy Irishman, Joe Biden, is once again dictating to all and sundry that the Northern Ireland Protocol must be sorted out. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. So, the US president, who calls himself Irish, Sleepy Joe Biden, has decided to keep his hooter well and truly pressed into the matters pertaining to the Northern Ireland Protocol. He thinks he has the right to stomp about dictating terms. But there does seem to have been a slight change of tone from him. In that, instead of doing the usual swinging of brickbats against the UK for not implementing the whole of the Belfast Agreement destroying protocol, he's now started to pile some of the pressure on the European Union to make progress. And the US administration wants it all cut and dried before the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Agreement next April. Because sleepy Irish Joe wants to have a prime seat at the anniversary shindig. So the big question has to be asked. Is the Biden administration on a big push for the sake of peace in Northern Ireland, or so that Biden can attend and play it like he's the one that got it done? And given his recent gaffes, many people are questioning if the US president could actually find either Belfast or Dublin on a map of the world. After all, he does seem to have a problem with differentiating between Cambodia and Colombia, even when reading from his notes.
And now that we are back together here in Cambodia, I look forward to building even stronger progress than we've already made. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for Colombia's leadership in the ASEAN chair and for hosting all of us. And also I want to recognize that we're going to be in all the work that Indonesia has done this year, Mr. President. Thank you.
Now, London, Dublin, Brussels and Washington all want to see the end to this protocol squabble. But it really all hinges on the response of the DUP to any deal struck between the UK and the EU. Because if the DUP are unhappy, they can collapse the power sharing agreement again after the new Stormont elections that have been rescheduled for April to give time for some agreement to be reached. But while the EU insists on the ECJ having final jurisdiction over Northern Ireland and the protocol imposing a border down the Irish Sea, I can't see what will change to placate the DUP. Now, Sinn Féin blocked power sharing for a couple of years over the status of the Irish language in Northern Ireland. But now they're bleating because the DUP is faced with a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, so refuses to engage with them. So don't believe Sinn Féin when they feign some sort of outrage over this. They've played those politics too in the past. And while all this goes on, we have the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt warning us that he's having to make some horrible decisions about how he's going to have to make us all pay a bit more tax. It's like it's his government's money and he's allowing us to keep a bit less of it, isn't it? Those who say that all taxation is theft have a point when we're getting back to wartime levels of taxation during peacetime. Yes, I know there's been a pandemic and that the knock-on effects of the Russia-Ukraine war will hurt us all, but we're now still spending beyond our means and the national debt is still going up, a debt that has to be serviced with now rising interest payments. A central bank-backed sovereign government seems to have, well, it does have, the unlimited ability to tax, borrow and spend at will. When spending on the pandemic, an honest government would have put a warning on the money, saying this will be very painful when you come to pay it back. But no, Rishi Sunak, when Chancellor, and yes, Boris Johnson too, were engaged in smiles and mutual backslapping as they told us they'd saved the nation. And now we're finding out how much all that furlough and all those PPE contracts have cost us. And Labour wanted even more to be spent too. But there was no warning on the tin, was there? Now, if you think the UK owes a lot of money, let's move on and take a look across the pond at the US of A. Over there, the government is constrained by law not to overspend. There is a legal debt ceiling. But as the year comes to a close, there is always a looming overspend, and if they don't increase the limit, they're forced to send government workers home with no wages for a couple of weeks. Very 21st century. So in the end, Congress votes on how much more debt they can take on. Something that obviously negates the whole purpose of having a debt ceiling. Anyway, the UK has a national debt of 2.3 trillion quid with a debt to GDP ratio of near 100%. But the US has an eye-watering debt of $31.2 trillion at a debt to GDP ratio of something like 130%. And it's projected to climb to 135% in the next few years. And right now that $31.2 trillion debt is very close to the $31.4 trillion limit. The ex-chair of the Fed and now US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning that they need to up the spending limit sharpish or risk hitting the economic buffers in the third quarter of 2023. And it all hinges on who controls the House at the time of the vote, the Democrats or the Republicans. So there is a push to get the vote over with now and be able to splurge more dosh while the Democrats are still in charge and can't be stopped by the Republicans. After all, the left loves to spend money, as amply demonstrated by the UK Conservative government. Oh, wait. And now we have a very emotional Richard, who is a little upset at how our homeless veterans are treated. Take it away, Richard.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. This is a message to all the disposable, gutless wonders sitting in Parliament. Today is Remembrance Sunday, and today our political class is in full sanctimonious mode, as they remember the fallen with their vacuous and disingenuous utterances, whilst they are driven in their ministerial cars past those who served and now find themselves sleeping rough on the streets of London and every other city and town in this country. It's no good pretending to remember them when there are ex-servicemen living on the streets. You're remembering the dead with a poppy and forgetting the living, leaving them to die of hypothermia after they have lost everything thanks to the impact of their service. These men and women went to war at the behest of the Parliament, in which you now take a seat. Oh, don't you worry. Those ex-service men and women know their place in the pecking order and the value of their sacrifice. They know it. They know it every time they wake up on a cold pavement to some city banker urinating on them. Yes, they know their lives are of so little value to you that you will put up boat people in first-class, 5-star luxury hotel accommodation whilst they have a concrete pillow. I may not be a fan of the royal family, but I would shake King Charles's hand if he publicly grabbed Sunak and said, "Get my boys off the streets!" This Remembrance Sunday, I call upon Richard Tice, Nigel Farage and Lawrence Fox to stand up and come forward and unite under whatever common flag they can fly under. Your country needs you. Stop the invasion and get our ex-service men and women off the streets. Back over to you, Jeff.
Thank you for that heartfelt call, Richard. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.